A new Senate report released this morning reveals some security failures by government agencies prior to the January 6th attack on the Capitol. One senator went so far as to say the attack was, quote, planned in plain sight. The report claims the FBI and a division of Homeland Security Department were both made aware of credible threats prior to the insurrection, but they didn't adequately address them. I want to bring in CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Sganga to discuss this report. This is really concerning, Nicole. We had known before that there was a lot of chatter online, but the idea that that the FBI and others knew of very credible threats but didn't make the right decisions. Where did the intelligence agencies fail, according to this report?
Yeah, Anne-Marie, this 105-page report from Senate Democrats accuses the FBI of downplaying the risks and warnings ahead of the January 6th attack on the Capitol, going so far as to compare some of those shortcomings to the moments leading up to the September 11th terror attacks. Now, what specifically are we talking about? Well, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security panel, Senator Peters, you mentioned it there, he called this an attack essentially planned in plain sight on social media. One of the new red flags. FBI acknowledged receiving intelligence on January 3rd, 3 days before the attack, about a plan to stage armed quick reaction forces in nearby Roslyn, Virginia. Federal agents were tracking threats about the storming of the U.S. Capitol, plans to occupy federal buildings, and an increase in traffic to a website with information about the Capitol's tunnel system. One tip to FBI in December of 2020 about the risk posed by the far-right Proud Boys group, urged authorities to, quote, please take this tip very seriously and investigate further. But intelligence analysts fell short of warning law enforcement, and the office within DHS, you mentioned it there, tasked with alerting police partners about potential threats, did not issue a single intelligence report in the run-up to January 6th. Instead, congressional investigators found a lot of finger-pointing, particularly after the events unfolded, some intel officials squarely blaming U.S. Capitol Police here.
Wow. So I know this is not the first congressional report issued on, this topic on the January 6th investigation. How is this different? Because I don't believe I've heard this much criticism for some of these intelligence agencies before. So how is this different, and what were the recommendations coming out of this report?
Yeah, Anne-Marie, this report argues that the previous report by the House Select Committee largely focused on President Trump's role in attempting to overturn the 2020 election and only briefly touched on federal intelligence efforts in the lead up to January 6th. Still, Senate Democrats mined those published transcripts of interviews conducted by that committee to help write this report. Now, some key recommendations. FBI and DHS have not yet completed reviews of what went wrong in the lead up to January 6th. 2.5 years later, this report urging them to hurry up and finish evaluating what went wrong there, then share it publicly. Another recommendation, improving guidelines for intelligent dissemination, including open source threats that are on social media. And finally, designating the presidential election as what's called a national special security event. NSSEs, events like the inauguration, the Super Bowl, put the U.S. Secret Service and other federal law enforcement in charge of coordination and boost funding around what has become a very high security event now, presidential elections, of course.
Have we heard at all from DHS or the FBI responding to the results of this report?
Yeah, they were quick to respond, and DHS noted that this report fell short of reflecting recent departmental changes to address some of the stopgaps in intelligence sharing. A spokesperson told me that since the January 6th attack, DHS has strengthened its analysis, its information sharing, its operational preparedness. It's issued more than 130 intelligence products related specifically to domestic violent extremism. An FBI spokesperson said the Bureau is constantly trying trying to learn and evaluate what it can do better or differently, and this is especially true in the aftermath of that attack on the U.S. Capitol. They added that the FBI has centralized the flow of information to ensure threat notifications to all field offices, but this report's findings, refute FBI Director Chris Wray's June 2021 congressional testimony, which didn't acknowledge the communications failures that we saw in the report here. And again, both DHS and FBI have yet to issue those internal reviews of what went wrong, and we are now 2.5 years after that January 6th attack. Anne Marie.
Very interesting. Nicole Sganga, thank you.
Thank you.